Welcome to the Logistics Leadership Podcast once again, everyone. I am your host, Karl Siebrecht. Great to be with you. And as always, great to be joined by my co-host, Ben. Ben, how's it going?
It's going great, Karl. We're into a new year, and I'm looking forward to more episodes with you and more great conversations with our guests. But what do we have upcoming today?
Today, because we're into a new year, we thought this would be a great opportunity to hear from our guests in specifically the predictions they had for the future over the course of the episodes we've aired already this season. So it's new year. Why not look forward to the predictions that folks have? And it's also worth noting that we're into a new administration. And along with that, likely comes some additional uncertainty. So just makes the predictions maybe even more challenging. But nonetheless, let's give it a go and summarize what we've heard from these bright minds and experienced folks throughout this season.
Yeah, and these bright guests we had weren't scared at all to share their predictions for the future up to 3 to 5 years out. So, in going back through those conversations, some clear themes emerged there. I think we'll talk about three today. But Karl, before that, I wanted to tee up Bob Spieth's conversation. Board member, supply chain veteran, leader. This guy understands what's going on in logistics, and he calls out that logistics isn't moving fast enough and that things do need to change over the upcoming years for us to service the needs of the consumer.
Perfect place to start. Let's give it a listen.
In my work with private equity, I'm getting a little deeper back into the 3PL world, and I'm surprised how little has changed in many ways. That many things are still the same. It's the supply chain world is still super fragmented. There's still a ton of manual handoffs. There's still a lot of customization for, a lot of things are very, very similar to what they have been. In the next 3 years. So my first prediction would be, hey, I wouldn't expect the next 3 years to look massively different.
So what Bob had to say there was just exactly why I'm excited to talk about this subject and the future in general in logistics. There's so much potential that's unrealized for us to offer greater value in this space.
No doubt, no doubt. And again, Bob, with kind of his first and foremost focus and orientation around great execution and operations, it's also super interesting to hear that forward-looking view from somebody who, at core, is an operator. So Ben, you had mentioned what we've done is organizing these predictions into a few different themes. Could you just sort of lay out for us what the themes are that we're going to roll through?
Absolutely. And you'd already talked about the uncertainty coming with the new administration. I think that one of the top things in all supply chain leaders' minds is what's going to happen in geopolitics over the next 4 years, not just in the US. We've got unrest in Ukraine and in the Middle East. So everybody wants to know where that lands us. So I think we're going to hear some great things from our customers. Jesus. So I think we're going to hear some great things from our guests there. But we can't talk about supply chain predictions without talking about the future of technology, obviously. So our second big theme is going to revolve around that, and we've had some great guests specifically in that space.
That's right.
But technology, in and of itself, is a tool. So I think we've got a good reason to put together a separate theme just about how the technology advancements unlock different ways of setting up supply chains, whether that's inventory management or network design, or even the commercial agreements that companies make between one another to get supply chain moving.
Great. So we got three themes: geopolitics, technology, and how that technology contributes to re-optimizing or making supply chains more nimble, more flexible, more dynamic. Sounds great. Let's kick off then with geopolitics and the impact they may have on supply chains. And we're going to start with a couple of thoughts from our guests around nearshoring specifically. Let's give it a listen.
I mean, we have heard about nearshoring now for a year and a half, 2 years, right? Um, I think in some of those cases, some of those plants have already been able to shift, but you're also seeing continued growth of companies and inbounding into the U.S. from Mexico. I think we're going to see more and more of that. You've also seen a shift because of all the supply chain struggles in Long Beach and LA of people shifting to purchase product from other countries. And look what the growth that has happened in Houston, Savannah, um, you know, heck, even Jacksonville on the growth of the ports. And I think we're going to continue to see that and that growth of some of these other ports because they're going to, where we get our products is definitely going to shift.
So the biggest thing that's happening now, and it's already started, but is going to continue to happen, is nearshoring and friendshoring. So this move away now only for key goods. We're never going to make shoes, in Pennsylvania, or at least we shouldn't if we want to make any money on it. But for things like batteries, semiconductors, rare earths, pharma, we're seeing a lot of that pull back into the Western hemisphere. I think you'll see big investments continue in places like Mexico, but also maybe Costa Rica, maybe Venezuela, Honduras. There's a young labor force in Central and South America that I think is ready, to really join the world economy a little more. And there's pieces of the semiconductors. Like we'll do parts of it in Arizona, parts of it in Texas. We can't do everything. It doesn't make sense from a cost perspective. But okay, well maybe the part that we normally do in Vietnam, we can do in Costa Rica or Puerto Rico or it's anywhere over here. And I know Puerto Rico is a U.S. protectorate, but the labor is different there. And so I think supply chains are really going to reorient for certain goods to look more south than currently where we're looking, I guess, east, but you kind of go west. Now, there's certain things that'll never change. Again, apparel, some electronics. I think will stay. And I would also point out we don't want to totally disentangle from China. That would be a terrible idea. We're the number two economy. We're the number one economy. They're number two. It's great that we are so tied in together because the U.S. China economic relationship really sort of guarantees peace in some ways. Because that on the side of the Thunderbird School in Arizona, it says when goods don't cross borders, soldiers do. These were all guys, by the way, that came back from World War II and thought, well, how do we not do that again? Start an international business school. And so for me, really it's just expanding it. We're not pulling things out of China. Now, you don't want to be too dependent on China. We clearly saw that during the pandemic. But you never want to pull all the way away. But I think over the next 3 or 4 years, the real challenge is going to be how do we near source and friend source things, especially because we're dealing with we can go to Mexico, but maybe we don't have the capacity, there, or maybe we don't have the just institutional tacit knowledge. I mean, we don't have folks living in Honduras who've been working in an iPhone factory for 15 years, like maybe we do in China. So some things will move, some things won't, but the things that do move, that will be the big challenge, I think.
Carl, before we get into the technology portion here, these nearshoring conversations and predictions sparked me on us saying geopolitical too many times. Disruption is not just geopolitical, right? There's a lot of disruption, thinking about COVID in particular, that had nothing to do with politics and that we need to A, be prepared for, and B, be building the supply chains of the future against. I think your guest, Diane, had a really good point on that. Let's take a listen.
And one of the other things, because we certainly are not seeing any slowdown. In fact, sadly, an increase in catastrophic weather events. One of the boards that I'm on, company lost a 1 million square foot facility and all the trailers that were outside of it, totally destroyed in a tornado. Um, and it was servicing a meaningful percentage of their total store fleet, and the building was leveled. Thank God, no one was hurt. But trying to think through more responsive disaster recovery scenarios, right? How are you going to make up that loss in capacity, loss in service? What kind of scenario planning can you do to make sure that you're ready for that?
We're hearing a lot here about the geopolitical realm changing, and that's changing how we as logisticians need to plan our supply chains. I think the one commonality there is that we should expect more geopolitical upheaval over the next 4 years or so, and that we need to have the tools in place to respond to that, either proactively or reactively. But without the tools to do something with that knowledge, there's limited ability to impact it.
For sure, for sure. And as predictions go, it's probably a pretty safe one. That it's more likely that there will be continued or more instability and uncertainty than less going forward, unfortunately. But to your point, one of the most valuable responses to that, of course, comes in the form of technology tools, which is our second theme: how technologies can further or will further support supply chain optimization going forward. So we got a couple of insights here from a few of our guests. Let's go ahead and give that a listen now.
It's not necessarily being the best at individual technologies. It's the best at making the technology seamless across both the services you're providing and the 3PL, the shipper, and your integrated providers in your ecosystem as well, carriers, visibility providers. That's where we're seeing more focus on the interplay, less on potentially, massively cutting edge. You'll see more of that, but more time in making sure those places play well together and provide, the meaningful value that's going to be key.
I do think we're going to see a continued uptick in automation, whether in our factories, whether in our warehouses, especially those that end up potentially being moved, back on shore, if you like. I do think, that kind of more fully autonomous, digital, sort of 100% digital, as we describe it, supply chain operations will take a lot longer than 3 years to come into existence. But that's really the direction we're heading in. And I think it's going to be an exciting time, perhaps also an unsettling one for many people. So, from that perspective, I think, great leadership is really going to be at a premium as we kind of steer our supply chains towards, what could be quite a different looking future.
So I think that's why we pulled out this third theme here, and that how you use those orchestration and visibility tools, how you use AI, determines whether you're going to improve your operations or not. It's not just a tool that you bolt on and suddenly things get more efficient.
That's exactly right. This third theme is really connecting the technologies to execution. Execution in the physical world, which of course is the world that we all live in and love so much. So let's give a listen to a couple of predictions around how, again, those technologies translate into the physical world.
I think a continuation of what people are doing on inventory management and inventory placement. You guys spend a lot of time working with customers, but the better predictive customers can have about having the right inventory at the right place at the right time, that then leads to density of delivery, that's products being available when consumer wants it, is a really hard problem to solve, but the benefits to everyone are massive.
This will be a little bit specific to shipper and broker. I don't know if it's 3 years or maybe 5 or so, but I think the notion of having a contract that keeps your rates as is for 12 months is going to fade away. I don't know if it's in 3 years or 5 years or more, but um, the notions that they were a clear reason why we did 12 months contract back in the days. Like, it is hard to set up those RFPs. It was hard to set up those RFPs. It was very time consuming for both the shipper, the broker, and the carriers. They were today they take minutes. We don't have that reasoning anymore that it takes too long to do it and operate it. And we all know that a quote that we had very, very often around the table at Transfix is, we don't want to be the smartest people without freight. So if you know the market's going up, but if you bid the right rate at an upper market, you lose all the freight. I think that concept is finally hitting people, and I am very hopeful for the brokers are there, which we no longer are, which I'm thankful we no longer are. That that the concept of a contract or like a rate that you have to keep for 12 months starts to fade away?
Well, I think really it's the right kind of um, automation from the point of view of getting the product to where it needs to go to be packed or shipped or whatever its journey is without a lot of human steps, human touches, room for error, right? So, and some of those have been around for a long time. So you've got, ASRS, those systems have been around, but you're seeing now, I guess maybe it's point of view of the cost coming down a little bit or the cost of labor rising to the point where it now becomes a lot more sensible. And then really with sensors and robotics, I've seen, at least in some innovation uh, exhibits, really some great tactile robots that can really do a lot um, with fine merchandise to try to pick it.
Hey, we've got our robot prediction in. I did not anticipate that we'd go this far as well without talking about Amazon. When it comes to supply chain and logistics, they've kind of led the way for the last 20 or so years. So what's going to happen with them in the next 3 to 5 years? This may not be a theme, but Nate Skyver's got a really great thought about that. Let's take a listen.
I see Amazon delivering more packages than UPS and FedEx combined. And now I don't think it's going to be this disruptive thing where Amazon has 30% of the package delivery market outside of their own volume, but more so, again, this is the math part of just their organic package volume growth. And as they, being Amazon, continue to deliver a higher percentage of that, their volume is going to grow quite a bit. And if package volume outside of Amazon in the market doesn't necessarily grow that much, or at least at the same rate, UPS and FedEx are competing with at least right now, dozens of other carriers for that volume. And so that continues to have an effect on the market of, again, Amazon driving growth, but not really making it available, I guess, necessarily externally.
I love ending on this theme of putting the technology together with execution, since Bob started us off today by talking about the need to execute. So, we're talking about the future and we're talking about bells and whistles in some cases here, but in reality, it's how you use the bells and whistles and how well you're able to orchestrate your entire supply chain, given what you can predict about the future and what you can't.
That's really well said, Ben. And it triggers a thought, which is there's one more prediction I want to include here. And it doesn't neatly fit into any of the three themes, but I think it's fundamental to what you were just talking about. And that is, what does the future look like for supply chains as a career attracting talent? Let's give a listen here quickly to Professor Chris Ferreira.
I think in terms of like attracting, maybe young folks that have a background or recent degree in data science or analytics, there's a lot of these folks coming out, now compared to 5-10 years ago that, given the, you know, trends of and kind of decreasing demand in big tech fields, which were traditionally like soaking up all of the talent in data science. I think a lot of recent grads now and new, relatively new employees are seeing like, hey, there's actually a lot of demand for these skills in other industries as well, including in supply chain management. And I think a lot of companies have invested in a lot of supply chain companies have invested a lot in storing data over the last many years and have troves of data to work with now, yet don't have the employees to go for it. And so this is like a fun situation for data scientists, right? It's like we have big problems, big data, and we can really kind of dive right in and make a difference.
Well, maybe not on theme there, Carl. I think Chris's thoughts are very important to the enabling of everything we've talked about here. We have to have great talent in this industry to solve the challenge of the next 3 to 5 years. So excited to see what's coming out of schools like HBS in that regard. But really great conversations, really great predictions from our guests. Thanking all of them again for going out on a limb and telling us what they think might happen in the future.
Yeah, no doubt. And for listeners who are listening carefully, you may have noticed that we haven't said anything about AI, which is kind of ridiculous given the reality of AI and the potential impact it will have on everything, including supply chains. So, in fact, there's a lot of content here around AI from our guests all season. And what we're going to do, instead of including them here in our predictions episode, we decided we would run a whole dedicated episode to AI and hear from our guests their thoughts and their predictions about the impacts of AI on supply chains. So look for that episode here shortly. In the meantime, Ben, wonderful being with you again today and hearing from you as always. And to our listeners, hopefully, again, you've taken away something from this episode that is a new thought, a new idea, and something you can build on. Until next time, let's keep the conversation going.